So after getting absolutely dominated by the Rams in London last week and marinating on that one for a while, I think it's time to look forward, but not yet at the Raiders in Week 9. No, there is still something very important we have to address: the trade deadline. I think it's no secret that the Jaguars could be more of a buyer at the trade deadline rather than a seller. But today we're going to look at the Jaguars' biggest needs and some trade targets that I wouldn't mind seeing happening if the Jaguars can pull it off. Let's get started. Welcome back to Jags Japan, where we talk all things Jags, Japan, drinks, anything in between, and I'm just a guy. So, before we begin, でも最初は朝ビールです。はい。どうもどうも、どうもどうも、美味しそうですね。これ濡れるよ。なんで泡大きいさね。またあるよ。もうちょっと完璧です。乾杯。うまい。うまい。涼しい朝で朝ビールは最高。Anyways, back to the video. Before we begin, if you're expecting me to kind of say something like, oh, let's trade BTJ, Trevor Lawrence, and a first-round pick for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, or something like that, it's definitely not what I'm going to be doing today. In my scenarios, I don't really see us giving up any players for other players. Especially just after like a few bad games. I don't think we need to trade BTJ or like Parker Washington or anything like that. Also, the Jaguars don't have a first round pick in next year's draft, so it's going to be pretty hard to get some of the names on this list. But second round picks and depth players still have some value too, right? So though the Jaguars don't have the best draft capital, I still think they have enough to, I think, make a decent splash in this trade deadline and see if we can add some depth or some star power to kind of a team that's lacking in playmakers and consistency. And another thing I'm not going to do in this video, I'm not going to make like real trade scenarios where like I actually say how much the Jaguars are giving up for what. Like, I think that just gets kind of like too complicated and kind of boring in my opinion. It's like, oh, the Jags give up the 5th and 6th this year, and then a 3rd and a 2nd next year, and Parker Washington, so they can acquire Quinnen Williams and Max Crosby. It's like, okay, I think that's a little too complicated. So I'm just going to go position group by position group and highlight a few players that I would like to see the Jaguars go after and how they fit into our team, and how they could really make an impact and kind of make up for some of the deficiencies that we've seen on both sides of the ball. So going into our first position group that I think the Jaguars should target is the edge rusher or pass rusher. And I think it's no secret that the Jaguars have been kind of lacking in this department this year. You know, I thought that this was going to be a huge strength of the team with Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker, and I think early on they were getting a lot of pressure. But with Trayvon not back to his old self with the club on, and Josh Hines Allen he's playing well at times, but just not consistent, and he's not getting the quarterback on the ground in sacks. So I think this is a position they could really help bolster for the rest of the season and beyond. Couple that with Ogba and Smoot not really playing that great either. They're just kind of like just guys, just bodies out there that aren't really producing that much. Adding a third premier pass rusher, I think, could really take the pressure off Josh Hines Allen and I think help him become more of his productive self again, and also help Trayvon maybe rest a little more so he can be back to his old self once his wrist heals up fully. So the biggest name here is obviously Trey Hendrickson, and that would be a dream come true, as you automatically get one of the league's best pass rushers. The problem is I just don't see the Jaguars necessarily doing that, especially for maybe a one-year rental, as he's only on a one-year contract and the Jaguars are going to have to pay him more if they want him on the team in the next coming years. Couple that with that, he's also on the back nine of his career. He's 31, I think, so he's only got a few years left. Obviously, he's still one of the best pass rushers in the game, so I definitely wouldn't be complaining. But, depending on what you'd have to give up, I mean, I'm sure the Bengals are asking for a first-round pick, either that or like a second and a good player or something like that. I just don't think the Jaguars give up that much for someone like him, especially when you're going to have to pay him moving forward. And I think the Jaguars are going to have to probably pay Trayvon Walker after this year, possibly. So, we can't have that much money on our defensive line unless you're going to let Josh Hines Allen go or something like that, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the Jaguars should look for a guy that they see realistically being here as a solid pass rusher, and that will be here maybe for a few years, maybe someone on the younger side, and someone that could possibly replace Josh Hines Allen if he doesn't get the production that we're kind of needing from him for how much he's getting paid. And when looking at the younger guys, my mind goes right to the worst team in football, the New York Jets. And they have a tandem of good pass rushers that are still young and on the rise. Though injured a lot, I think a guy like Jermaine Johnson or a guy like Will McDonald, are young stud pass rushers that I think can really help with this defense. And I don't think that they necessarily would cost something as high as like a first round pick. Maybe Will McDonald because of how young he is and he's been very productive. But I think a guy like Jermaine Johnson could be had for maybe a second or third round pick, plus a depth player like Ogba, for example. And you're kind of getting a mid to high tier pass rusher that will pair nicely with Josh and Trayvon and rotate with them, and is a guy that could get 8 to 10 sacks a year. And maybe a little bit more on the rise early in his career rather than Hendrickson, who's on the back nine. I don't really care which one, but I think Will McDonald intrigues me a little more because he's younger and has a lot more upside, in my opinion. This is only his third year, so if you were to trade for someone like him, you would potentially have another 2 years on his first round rookie contract. So that would give you the room you could pay Trayvon and still have this guy on his rookie deal for the next 2 or 3 years, and then possibly move on from Josh Hines-Allen as he's getting older, and then you have Will McDonald and Trayvon Walker for the next, who knows how long, 5-6 years. Johnson would also be a great addition as well, Jermaine Johnson. The injuries do scare me a little bit, but I doubt you would have to give up a lot for him, so he might be a good value pick. The next guy is Miami's duo of pass rushers, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Now, both of these players also have injury concerns, and they aren't necessarily young anymore, especially Bradley Chubb. But they have both played full-time this year and both have been pretty productive. And they both have more sacks than any of the pass rushers we have, that's for sure. Chubb, I don't think would be too expensive because of his age. And adding an experienced, productive player like that to our D-line, I think would kind of change the entire nature and system of our defense. And I don't think his contract is anything crazy by today's standards. The same goes for Phillips. And either of these guys, if the Jaguars were interested, I would say go for it. As the Jags could probably get, the best out of them for maybe 2 or 3 years in still the kind of their prime of their career. Now, another guy is obviously Max Crosby, which obviously I would love, but I just don't think that there's any way that the Raiders give him up, nor I don't think would the Jags be even able to afford him, both in draft capital wise or paying him. He would obviously become the best pass rusher on the Jaguars. I don't see it happening, but that would be pretty cool. Also, the Jaguars play the Raiders in a week, so I doubt that they would trade him to a team that they're just about to play. And other than those names, the only scenarios I could also see is there are some rumors of the Packers maybe trying to ship off one of their pass rushers in their crowded room after the Parsons trade. Obviously, besides Micah Parsons, they have Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, and Kingsley Enagbare. I don't know if that's how I'm saying his name. Sorry, Kingsley. But I think a guy like Enagbare is a really solid rotational piece and is probably the most realistic guy on this list, if we're being honest. The only problem is that he doesn't really elevate much. I think he'd come in and be maybe a small upgrade from Smoot and Ogba, definitely. And he would definitely kind of raise the floor, as Gladstone likes to say, of our pass rush, but adding him doesn't mean we are guaranteed an extra 4 sacks a game or something like that. Maybe a guy like Lucas Van Ness, who's kind of been a disappointing first round pick for the Packers so far. Maybe the Jaguars take a chance on him. He's still young on his rookie deal and give him a chance to succeed here in Jacksonville. I'm not sure, but that'd be kind of cool. But in my mind, if the Jaguars were to trade for a pass rusher, I think the most realistic one would be someone like Enagbare, just a rotational piece, someone to maybe up the production of our back-end pass rushers like Smoot and Ogba. But the one I would jump out of my seat for if the Jags managed to get would be someone like Will McDonald for the Jets. Someone young, up and coming, and a lot of talent, and it would be someone to pair with Josh and Trayvon for the next 2 or 3 years. That would be excellent. But we'll see about that. I'd say the likelihood of the Jaguars trading for a pass rusher, given what you usually have to give up for someone like that, I think would be pretty low. But let's move on to the next one, which is wide receiver. Now, obviously, we all know the biggest issue concerning the Jags right now, and the weakest link of the Jaguars, in my opinion, is our wide receiver room, which is very far from what I thought it was coming into this year. I truly thought we had really something special in BTJ and Travis Hunter, and I thought De'Ami Brown and Parker Washington were really good 3 and 4 wide receivers that I would produce a lot. They actually are probably exactly what I thought they would be, but obviously the biggest disappointment has been Brian Thomas Jr. and the usage of Travis Hunter. Now, Travis Hunter is coming on the scene a lot more, and I do expect them to be using him as a wide receiver 1 going forward, but obviously the biggest problem here is Brian Thomas and kind of the lack of production and the lack of trust that we kind of have in him because of his drops. But I think, honestly, this is the thing that I think needs to be addressed the most. And it's a little hard because bringing in a wide receiver at this point, who's got to learn the whole new system and get rapport with Trevor Lawrence, obviously that wouldn't help immediately. but I think in the long term it might be good for at least the rest of this year and for next year too. And, we could all hope that BTJ kind of gets out of this slump, on his own, but I think having maybe a consistent pass catcher along him and Travis Hunter, I think it could be a huge upgrade and it could actually help Brian Thomas a little bit. I think it would help him be designated to kind of maybe an outside only receiver, only catch out routes, go balls, comebacks, nothing over the middle. And I think it could also give the Jaguars a lot more freedom to use Hunter on the defense in cornerback 1 roles, which I think the Jaguars sorely need as well. But when looking at potential receivers available, as always, you got to look at the worst teams in football and look at their frustrated number 1 receivers. And no number 1 wide receiver in the NFL is probably more frustrated right now than Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson obviously would be great, hugely improve this offense, as he has great hands, he can run every route, great speed, agility, makes people miss, can high point the ball, and he also just got paid, so the contract's kind of already taken care of. You would just have to take on probably the bulk of that contract, which I think the Jaguars can when you think about that. Their wide receiver room is pretty low end on the salary spectrum. The only guy they're paying right now is De'Ami Brown with just $8 to $10 million for 1 year. So you could take on a big contract while you have Hunter and BTJ on rookie deals and Parker Washington on a rookie deal as well. Garrett Wilson's been super frustrated because he's got Justin Fields throwing on the ball and now Tyrod Taylor, so that would be pretty awesome. But I don't think that the Jaguars would do this. And, I don't think they necessarily need to give up the farm, for a true number 1 receiver, because who knows how much it would cost to get Garrett Wilson. Probably a number 1 or a decent player at the very least. But I don't think the Jaguars need to maybe give up the farm for a number 1, because I do have hope that sometime this season or maybe next season that BTJ does find himself again. And, we don't want the room to get too crowded for that to happen. And it's kind of also how I feel about Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins. I think either Waddle or Wilson would be great for this team, and I would love to see them in a Jags uniform and be the wide receiver 1 on this team. But I'm afraid that they may cost a little too much to give up for the Jaguars right now, as we are still looking kind of for the future of this franchise. And we still want to kind of develop BTJ a little bit more. Would I love to still see it? Heck yeah, I would. Sign me up. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle on the Jags. Offense instantly improves and hopefully would fix a lot of things. Now, outside of those 2 receivers, I want to look at New Orleans because they also have a duo. Of wide receivers that really intrigue me: Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. I do like both of these receivers. I really do like Rashid Shaheed. I feel like he's very slept on as a wide receiver. He is super explosive and kind of has Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle, playmaking ability. But Chris Olave is definitely a lot more of a kind of reliable possession receiver that also has a lot of speed and would fit perfectly into the slot and run routes over the middle. Injuries have kind of derailed his career a little bit, so that kind of scares me. But Chris Olave, sign me up. Just like Waddle, Wilson. Problem is, what would the Jaguars have to give up and pay him to, have him on the team? Though he's currently a little injured right now, he is actually slated to come back against the Jags next week, funny enough. But if you want to talk about someone who is reliable, physical route runner, and has no problem catching passes in traffic and taking one, Jakobi Meyers would be perfect. He also wants to be traded, so even better. I think this would be an ideal fit, as I think it gives Trevor a reliable option outside or in the slot for kind of those short to intermediate routes, and he's good on the deep ball as well. He's kind of an all-around very good receiver. However, I wouldn't classify Jakobi Meyers as a elite, true number 1 receiver. So I think this also gives room for Travis Hunter and PGJ to still get a large share of the targets, and for Brian Thomas to maybe still develop a little bit and get out of the funk that he's in. Because I don't think the Jaguars should give up on Brian Thomas. This is a second-year player. We got him for at least 3 more years. I gotta think that given what we saw in his rookie year, he's going to bounce back from this, and the talent will end up showing out. He's just got to get out of his own head, and has got to just catch a few balls and get that confidence back. But getting someone like Jakobi Meyers would fit in perfectly. He could be in the slot or outside. Travis Hunter could also be able to, avoid double coverages and all of the attention on offense. Brian Thomas could have the freedom to kind of run the routes that he's comfortable running, and Jakobi Meyers could do a lot of the dirty work over the middle and even on the outside too. That's really all I got for wide receivers that I think could be a great upgrade. As for who I would want the most, it's hard to pick, but I think Jalen Waddle's explosive ability would be awesome to see in this offense. He'd be immediate wide receiver number 1 and would get the bulk of the target share along with Travis Hunter. So I'd pick him, but as far as the most realistic that could actually happen, I think Jakobi Meyers, which I would be all in on if that happened. All right, next we're going to go into interior defensive line. This is a spot that the Jaguars have needed for a while now. I think they've actually been pretty good at stopping the run so far this year. Devon Hamilton has quietly had a really good year so far, but the problem is that we're not getting enough pass rush out of our interior D-line. You know, Armstead's been okay at times, but Mason Smith is kind of nowhere to be found at times, and a big upgrade here could be a really big difference in also helping our pass rushers on the outside as well. But the biggest problem here is that there's not a lot of defensive tackles on the market, and if there was one, I doubt the Jaguars could afford them, as premier defensive tackles are probably some of the most valuable pieces you can have in an organization. Think of a guy like Dexter Lawrence or Byron Murphy on the Seahawks. Those kind of guys, teams just aren't trading for them. And the ones that are available or could be available are going to cost probably way too much. But even so, here's a few names that I think that the Jags, should at least try to go after. To me, the biggest fish, the dream scenario would be Quinnen Williams from the Jets. He's an excellent player, would be awesome to get, great in run stopping, and great in causing havoc up the middle and really getting that interior pressure on the quarterback. Excellent player, be awesome to get. I'm just afraid it would cost way too much from a draft capital sense. But if the Jags could do it, that would be good. It would probably cost a lot of money as well. The same goes for Jeffrey Simmons. He's the heart and soul of the Tennessee Titans, but it's pretty clear that, they suck. Let's just be honest. They suck, and they need a huge rebuild. They just fired their coach. Cam Ward looks pretty good, I would say, but they really got nothing going on the offense or defense. So giving up him would be pretty dumb, honestly, for the Titans. But even if they did, I doubt there's any way that they trade him to an in-division rival like the Texans or the Jags. But that would be pretty awesome as well, obviously. And then the only other guys I got for you really are from the Cardinals. Dalvin Tomlinson, who was brought there. He's on a 2-year deal, a little bit of an older vet, but he's a solid player, and I think trading for him could, immediately kind of upgrade that position, maybe take some reps away from Mason Smith or Eric Armstead. And a really funny, but I think a really cool one would be bringing Calais Campbell back home for like one last ride. But I don't know. I doubt either of these happen. I'll say this is the position that is the least likely to happen, but if it did, might as well just go all out and get someone like Quinnen Williams. It would be a ton to get him, but you get a blue chip interior pass rusher who's also still pretty young and in the prime of his career. Might as well go for it. Now, the last position I'm going to address on this list is tight end. And I think tight end makes a lot of sense. And it's been pretty clear that without Brenton Strange on the field, there isn't much of another kind of playmaker or security blanket for Trevor Lawrence other than Travis Hunter. Now Strange is going to be coming back, I believe, in 2 or 3 weeks. I think probably week 10 or 11. But getting a guy who could potentially be tight end 1 for the next few weeks and then be a reliable tight end 2 in the passing game after Strange comes back could be something the Jaguars really look into. There are a few decent options here. Obviously, Mark Andrews is the big name that's being floated around. I think it's a great option, as I think, he's affordable. I don't think you'd have to give up too much to get him, given his age. And they have Isaiah Likely, who is, really their tight end 1. And though he's on the back 9 of his career, having Mark Andrews come in to really just come in for like 2 to 3 weeks to just be a safety blanket and just a reliable pass catcher up the middle, and just be able to block decently well. I think there's definitely enough left in the tank for him for that at least. And then when Strange comes back, that would be a really good, I think, 2 tight ends set with Mark Andrews and Brenton Strange. You probably wouldn't know who's going to catch, who's going to block. I think that'd be really good. And I think it would be an upgrade over Hunter Long, to be honest. Another name out there is David Njoku from the Browns. That would be a great addition. He's incredible, but the only thing here is I doubt the Browns would be willing to trade him this year. I think there's a part of the Browns that maybe still believe in this year somehow, or I just don't see that the Jaguars trading with the Browns again for like the 3rd time this year. Another name out there is Okonkwo for the Titans. I think he has a lot of playmaking upside. I think he'd be pretty good. especially in the passing game, but I just doubt that the Titans trade in the division, so I don't know if they would actually do that. And then there's also a short list of tight ends that I think are really talented, pretty productive, but underused by their teams because they already have a tight end one that they use a lot or are trying to use a lot more. And that is three guys I'm going to list: Michael Mayer from the Raiders, Luke Musgrave from the Packers, and Cole Kmet from the Bears. Michael Mayer, obviously heavily underutilized because of Brock Bowers. Luke Musgrave, heavily underutilized because of Tucker Kraft. And although Cole Kmet is used a lot in Chicago, I think they really want Loveland, the number 10 pick in the draft, who they picked over Tyler Warren. I think they really want him to be the number one guy eventually, and I think I could see them kind of moving on from Cole Kmet, if someone were to call them to make a move. So I think one of those three really intrigue me, and I think could have huge upside, and honestly, and pretty good future upside as well as, Brenton Strange and a combination of one of these three guys could be a really good tight end group. But out of all of these, I think the most realistic one would be Mark Andrews. That's the one that's kind of been rumored the most. I think he'd be a good fit. He's not someone who's going to stay on the team for like 2 or 3, 4 years or anything, but for 1 year, see if you can get a little bit out of him. What is left in the tank? Can he just be a solid pass catcher and safety blanket for Trevor? I think it'd be a good guy like that. But I think the guy I would like the most, who I'd love to see the Jaguars go and get, would be someone like Kmet, who I think could be a good playmaker, pass catcher, blocks well, and be really good for the Jags right now, and could be a really solid tight end number 2 when Strange is healthy. And some could argue maybe tight end number 1, but I believe a lot in Brenton Strange, and I think he's shown he can really be a top-tier tight end in this league. So those are the 4 areas that I would like to possibly see the Jaguars trade for in the next couple days. I did leave out some positions like safety, corner, offensive line for now. I think those could just as easily be on my list as well. But I think the 4 that I gave are honestly, I think, the biggest needs right now. As far as the one I want most to come true, I think I would love to go get another pass rusher, a premier pass rusher, kind of to help out this defense. Or if not that, a really solid possession receiver like Jacoby Myers to be a true reliable number 1 or number 2 receiver with Travis Hunter while BTJ kind of figures his stuff out. However, most likely none of these come true. If I'm going to be honest, I doubt the Jaguars actually make a trade. I know James Gladstone has kind of been one to make some moves already. He's already traded Tyson Campbell for Greg Newsome. And hey, there could be a trade that comes out today while I'm making this video and I don't even know about it yet. But it just seems unlikely the Jaguars are going to go make a splash for a big name. And if it is, it's probably something like someone you probably never heard of, some depth player on another team or something. But anyways, let me know which one of these scenarios that you like the best, and let me know which player you think the Jaguars should go after for real. I appreciate you guys watching and supporting the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more Jags Japan content. See you later!